Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's Mediaworks Masterclass. We'll do introductions first, Johnny. I'm glad to be back. So I'm the regular host of the Masterclass. So for those that don't know me, I'm David Norris, the Chief Operating Officer here at Mediaworks. I didn't do the last one. I have listened to the last session, so hopefully we can draw upon some of the principles from that, Johnny. But Johnny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Johnny. I'm the UX director at Mediaworks. So my job here is to look at our existing customer experience and see where we can optimize our digital experiences to drive more revenue conversions and make them work a bit harder.
Fantastic. So this session really forms part of a series where we've been looking at all things user experience, conversion rate optimization. Like, we'll go into why all of that really makes a difference and massively matters as we go through. But today's real focus is about sort of turning browsers into buyers, designing product pages that engage and convert. You know, I think it's really important to say about where the agency started at this point. You know, we started as a performance agency sort of 18 years ago, and it was all about driving traffic to a web platform, whether that be an app, whether it be, you know, a website, whether it be, you know, a subdomain, etc. That's what we focused on. And then about, 12 years ago, we started building websites. And really, since that point, this has been a massive importance to us, because if you're spending all of that time, energy, effort driving traffic to site, you want to make sure you're maximizing that traffic. And, I'm sure everybody on the call will be thinking about sort of efficiencies and how to make sure we're sort of eking the most efficient and effective performance out of our websites. For me, this is one of the key areas that is sort of across absolutely everything. It really touches and impacts everything. So what we want to do today, and I know we talked about this in the last session, but I think this is a really important time of the year for those thinking about e-commerce or those in product-based marketing ultimately. So we're going to offer a free UX consultation in our standard format, but with a real focus on sort of how can we think about what optimizations would we make now? So that's an opportunity for you and your team, Johnny, to really deep dive into the site, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think with this, yes, we're saying sort of 3 tailored recommendations, but actually let's have a conversation. The best part of this is the conversation, really understanding where somebody is at in their experience journey in terms of optimization, what we're implementing now, where we're seeing problem areas, and we can have that much deeper discussion within that time as well.
And I think for me, this is such an important point in terms of the calendar for a lot of e-commerce brands, because I know we talk about this. Bizarrely, I was listening to a Google workshop about like leading into retail peak, and they're talking about like 50% of all online transactions taking place in that third quarter of the year. So across October, November, December. So that's a massive impetus on everybody to make those changes and doing the testing now. Because I think the problem is if you leave this a bit longer, you've got real issues, because trying to test things during peaks probably not where you want to be.
Absolutely. And in such a competitive landscape, I can guarantee the majority of people's competitors will be doing this already.
Yeah.
So we absolutely need to get ahead of that curve and make sure that we're testing, getting things fixed, getting things ready, optimizing for that key peak term.
Yeah, so if you do want to speak to Johnny and draw upon the expertise that we've got in Mediaworks through Johnny's team, then and get that sort of tailored insight, then please do sign up using the link that we've just posted in the chat. For those listening on catch up, we will send an email, so by all means do sign up for that, where, as I say, this isn't a off-the-shelf opportunity. This is a tailored, bespoke, real look into your website where we want a conversation with you about things that we're seeing in terms of best practice, etc. So do sign up. We touched on this, Johnny, where we're saying this is part of the UX Masterclass series. Obviously, the first 2 that we've delivered are available now. We're live today. We're turning browsers into buyers. And the next one for us, which is really important and feels like we can't talk about anything to do with digital in 2025 without mentioning it. But really, there's a focus on AI and the future of website experience. So that's what we're going to focus on next. So again, if you sign up for today, enjoy today, then please do sign up for the future session, because we'll be talking about where website experience is heading and what the things we're expected to see come out. So against all of that context, Johnny, I guess the key question is, why is considering the user experience so important during e-commerce design?
As we kind of touched on, I mean, we can see the scale of what that market is, just looking at in the UK there with the number and the stat there, but we're at a key point in the year. We're at a very competitive edge. E-commerce experience shifts so quickly between a user's expectation that even staying static on a design from 12 months ago will now be an outdated experience. Users are switching between platforms, whether that's app or website. Users are getting different experiences through the likes of ASOS or AO or even a booking.com, something that might not necessarily feel like a normal e-commerce experience that you might think of. All of these different drawdowns of experience are becoming the normal, and it's almost anything that hasn't been evolving with all of this is almost now falling behind. It begins to rust.
Yeah, I think for me, the way I always put it is if your website users rated your website as an 8 out of 10 last year, and you've done nothing to it, you're a 7 out of 10 this year as an absolute best guess, because the reality is people's expectations just move forward. You know, whether that be, you know, think about the way we are as consumers in life, you know, our retail experiences, our sort of consumer behaviors are all impacted by what we're seeing out there. What, you know, our expectations are constantly evolving and moving forward. So I think it's such an important piece, isn't it, that you've got to be aware of.
And I think when we talk about the e-commerce experience in this, well, the amount of traffic we'll be pushing to that area, the amount of budget we'll be putting behind paid spend, the amount of time and effort we'll be going into driving traffic to the site to then not be looking at that experience or optimizing that experience, just seems like a no-brainer that should be part of a larger strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we audited an account earlier this year, and we were like the account was spending, I think it was like 20, 30, 40,000 pound a month on driving traffic, and the conversion rate once hitting the site was 0.5%.
Yeah, and it's almost with the paid spend, by being more and more to that paid spend. Yes, you throw more at it, but just taking even a little consideration of utilizing some of that budget to optimize the experience would almost return double on what you're kind of putting in there. They always say £1 spent on optimization returns £2, because long term, that is a strategy. We're upping that conversion rate, or we're upping the amount of sales through that platform. That's where we need to be aiming.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a multiplier. You know, I look at CRO, to me, is just a pure multiplier. If you've got 100 people coming to your site and you're doing a 1% conversion rate, you're making one sale. If you just, you know, make some optimizations and still drive the same 100 people to your site and 2 of them convert, you start going, right, you doubled your impact, which is, for me, where I think a lot of brands get stuck, because they see almost performance and then a website, and you sat there going, no, but like, we need those things to work together and make sure it all works. So, you know, I know we'll touch upon a lot of this today and go through it. So I guess, what are the invisible barriers on product pages that silently lose customers? Like, I think we're going to draw down on some of our experiences and some of the latest research that's out there that really highlights some of the challenges that are out there and things that we're seeing that immediately turns off customers.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've seen quite a few of these, I think, from my experience, but some of these examples I've put in here are even recent examples that I've started seeing. Unclear or underwhelming product information in such a competitive landscape, where you're potentially selling the same product as a competitor or selling products that are very similar. Having a lack of information in that space will just draw down that confidence straight away making a purchase. If somebody can see additional information somewhere else, they are more likely to buy where they see that information. It's detail, it's quantity on content. And then from that aspect, you can then start down on actually the organic value of having that content in that space as well. Just means that you are building a more complete experience end to end on a product. But the amount of times we see products that have just a clear lack of information, and it's almost the thought that an image and a title and a cost should be enough to carry me through, but it's got it.
Yeah, it just doesn't, does it? And I think, like, there's so many times as well where I see people write actively sort of long descriptive product information content, and I'm still unclear about what it's actually saying.
Yeah,
You know, and
at least you make it say something. Like, it has to say something. It has to be the best approach to this. And I know we'll go into the sort of successes on this, but it's that bite-sized, broken down content. Just give me the detail that I need on this product, but tell me why I should buy it in the same sense. Just help people make that decision.
I totally understand. And then I think like we call missing trust signals, like we've been talking about this for such a long period of time, but it's amazing to me that we still see a lot of this not in place for a lot of brands.
Yeah, I audited a site in the last couple of days that had no USPs, no Trustpilot reviews, no clear indication on return delivery, like return periods, things like that. And that for me is just, it's almost a no-brainer of if you just add that, let's not even test it, just add it to the site because it will have a much better experience. They had all of those things in place. They had Trustpilot reviews that was, I think it was about 4.6 out of 5.
Right.
Wasn't shown on the site though. Like bringing those things to the forefront will instantly gain that attention, gain that conversion, because people who land here are looking to build trust instantly because they are about to put their details into a website. They're about to make a purchase. The risk comes with, I'm actually spending my money on this product. Therefore, we need to give them something that just removes that perceived risk in return. The trust signals will do exactly that.
I think for me, where I see this playing out quite a lot is in direct to consumer, bizarrely. So brands who often sell their product through a mix of retailers, but also go direct to consumer. It's like if you're presented with the same product, your product potentially, and you're in a D2C space and you're not offering this, and then you're selling through a retailer where they are offering all of these trust signals, it's like, it's really hard to make a compelling case to go direct to consumer.
Absolutely. And if we're lucky enough to be in a case of having actually product specific reviews,
Yeah.
that will always help. Product specific reviews, videos showing that product being used, things like that. All of this just helps support, build the trust and building confidence.
Through an image and media experience, like we're all becoming more visual, aren't we? Like visual learners and visual sort of users. So I think it's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. This one, we've all been frustrated with jumping onto a website and make a purchase and you see one product image.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm just not convinced with that. And like, the number of times you'll come out of that and then go and do your research elsewhere. But then you also have to try and think how this aligns with other buying experiences that might not necessarily feel like something that is a competitor review. But if you are comparing this to TikTok Shop, for instance, actually that is very visual.
Yeah.
That is purely based on either a reel or a video or an image of something. Then somebody is obviously expecting that now. That is part of an expected experience. So we need to match that and go with that. I think we've got a 3 times stat there compared with 360 image, but it's with video as well. Like people are 3 times more likely to do with video. Video doesn't have to be this professionally shot, amazing people. Like do an out of the box YouTube style video. This is what you get in the box. And people just like to see a tangible product and the detail that falls into that.
Yeah, and I think as well, I know we're talking about AI next week, but there are some amazing tools in AI as well around now how you turn, for example, static images into video as well. There's a massive, that is one of those things that when we come back to do this workshop or session in sort of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, this will have moved on even further and the expectation will massively be there. Hidden costs and delivery surprises. This is a killer for me. I can't stand this one. When you get to the checkout and then you get there and you've gone through all the process and then you see it and it's like postage and packaging, £7 or £12. And you start going, well, that made it just more expensive than the others. So there's so much that then immediately I'm thinking, well, it didn't feel very transparent.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit. It's almost pulling that up front allows somebody to at least begin to calculate that cost is in. Now, there's plenty of techniques you can do around pricing to get, we'll say the power of 3 and actually using 99s and 97s. The end of a price just removes that ability to calculate as evenly, so everything appears a little bit cheaper. We can do that up front, but actually it's the surprise element of I get to the last step. And even if you are buying something that's £100, you see that £3 delivery. Quite often you'll be like, I'll just go to the shop actually and sort that there. And you know what I mean? There's that tangible frustration that people get at that.
Train tickets are the one for me. Honestly, I get so frustrated with a train ticket when you go through and there's a price there and then they do a booking charge at the end. And you start going, the booking charge for literally entering my card details and basically being sent Yeah, it's on the boarding pattern thinking, this is ridiculous, but gets me every time.
Yeah,
But
and I think there's a lot in that space whereby we've ran tests in the past where we've just moved that delivery cost onto the price of product, and you instantly see a conversion go up because it's almost people don't perceive that they're getting anything for the delivery piece. It's almost an expected part of this. So then putting a cost on the back of that always becomes a barrier when actually we could bring that forward. A similar one I often see in this space around sort of in cost, but on the sort of other side of that is where people get offered discount codes, but they're like, sign up to this email address.
yeah,
Then you go to your emails to get the code. Then you're expected to come back to the site again. Another huge barrier. We might as well just give someone the percentage off on the website.
yeah.
Just keep someone in one place and allow them to convert.
Because that's such an incongruous process, isn't it? You know, it's like when you're going between browsers and you jump in here and jump in there, it just immediately creates that challenge.
And you run the risk of, if that email doesn't come through within 20 seconds, that sale is not happening.
Yeah.
Someone knows they could get it cheaper at that point and they're not getting it.
Yeah. In this one, then about weak call to actions and interaction design is like so important. I can still never believe that we see such like unclear call to actions on some product pages and e-commerce websites where it's like you have to scroll at the bottom and you're sat going, if you want to buy, let them buy.
Yeah. Finding the call to action is always a one for me. I mean, you can run tests on colors of call to action. Yes, there's color. The main one is what is written in that call to action. There's a chance to be, and we'll touch on it a little bit more as we go through this, there's a chance to be more transparent here and put the price of the item that someone's about to add to the basket in the call to action button.
Yeah.
Because then there's just a level of transparency to go, add to basket, it is that cost and I am adding that. But the amount of times I see submit, add to cart, which just stays a bit vague, or we're almost competing with ourselves in buy now versus add to basket, and it's call to actions, and there's quite often a lot of frustration that falls within this. And if you have to make somebody work hard to find that call to action.
Yeah, and I think as well, I mean, we'll talk about mobile first design. Like we've talked about that in so many of the masterclasses that we've looked at in terms of understanding that, 60+% of all traffic now is mobile, but you sat there going, so many times you see such different disparity between like desktop versus mobile experience and the functionality. And it's so important that you get that right.
Yeah, and there's within sort of the UX space, there's or as we call them, Jacob's Law, which says like, don't give somebody something that, give people the thing that they expect to see almost. If it's not broken, don't fix it. We need to some element, match our e-commerce experience with other aspects of what people expect from other experiences. Now, at times we go on a website and we'll audit it and we'll be questioning why conversion might be low. When we have a look, and it's almost because you've tried to reinvent the wheel in this situation of somebody understands how an e-commerce experience works. Give them that experience to an extent. Yes, we can be nuances. We can work on little aspects of building brand into there and making things a bit different, but almost don't create something wholly different.
Yeah.
When somebody comes on mobile to make a quick purchase, allow them to do that.
Yeah. I agree with that. So I guess sort of cart abandonment. Cart abandonment is like one of the most frustrating things for any sort of e-com manager, anybody running an e-com site. Going back to the point we started with, you've spent all this time, energy, effort getting somebody to your page. You've then gone through the whole process of they've liked your product, they've wanted to learn a bit more, they've gone to hit the cart, and then we see sort of they get that the cart page where it's like, right, hitting the cart, right, we're actually now making and we see that abandonment drop off. Like for me, that has got to be one of the most frustrating things if you're an e-commerce manager.
Yeah, definitely. And there's elements in here of how do we drive success from the top down, and then also what do we do in the cart that can also help, and that takes us all the way through to payment. I think as we touch on transparency around delivery returns up front, if there's costs, tell somebody in the first instance.
Yeah.
They just need to know that up front. There's no point in trying to hide that till the last moment, because when they have the highest intent, they also perceive that risk.
Yeah.
And let's just remove that barrier right at the start. AO do a nice thing we've kind of highlighted here is straight away up front, it's check for delivery date and price in your area.
Yeah.
So right straight from the off, it's not even estimate cost. It is your specific cost on the day you want it.
Yeah.
And then you can add it to your basket.
Yeah. It's quite nice, isn't
So
it?
that is a very, very transparent way of doing it, which obviously will work very nicely.
I think that point there about UK shoppers rank delivery clarity is the #1 trust factor in e-commerce just shows how frustrated we get if there isn't that transparency there.
And if you rank that alongside the delivery aspect plus the returns aspect, especially in a space where we know people like ASOS are now charging for certain levels of returns and things, there is now a big nervousness about, if I make this purchase, what happens after this point. So we just need to remove that as because that is now seen as a normal. I'm going to probably get charged for a return, or there's going to be an issue with a return, or I get a set amount of returns. People will start to lose trust if that was hidden away somewhere.
Yeah, so we've got to think about that, haven't we? And as you say, like that to me is a brilliant example there that highlighted by AO as a perfect example of where they are, as you say, being super transparent up front. So I think, again, lessons to be learned there. I think like then the next one would be clear, prominent, add to cart, click, call to action. I think it's so important.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's the clarity on the price at this. You have an opportunity to highlight, as I put an example there, add to basket, £99. It's because a lot of our products may have multiple options, multiple alternatives, an ability to select certain amounts, quantities, things like that. Let's just put in that call to action the price. It just means that we end almost that part of the journey with a very transparent, it is this. Someone doesn't click that, go through a basket, and actually the price is slightly high because of an alternative piece that they've picked that they didn't realize brought an additional cost. It just allows us to almost build trust instantly on that page. Then you can do multiple different things with that call to action. You can have it sticky on page so someone can find it very easy.
When you say that sticky, what do you mean?
So we probably say on mobile, it's where you see it stuck to the bottom of the page. It's almost, once you scroll past that call to action, you probably see it appear at the bottom.
I love that.
It just means that I could scroll through all of that information and there might be one little sentence or bit of text further down page that makes me go, yeah, this is the right product for me.
Yeah.
I don't then have to go, right, now I've got to find that call to action to make sure I can add it back. It is there. It follows me around. And it doesn't get in the way. People start to expect that it is. And it almost now, in a world where we're purchasing through apps.
I was going to say social commerce as well.
It becomes almost the normal. People expect that there's going to be options that stick around screens, such as live chat. Call to actions like this. I think let's just take that opportunity and get in front of people as much as we can.
Definitely. And then rich product media experience. Again, we talked a bit about this, didn't we, earlier, about the difference between single static images that one that gets me is ones that you can't zoom in on or see from multiple angles. So you sat going, I'm buying a pair of trainers and I can only see them from one side and I can't even go in and look at the detail. And I think that makes it quite difficult.
Yeah. And I think it's putting it into real life situation as well. You want to be able to see that product. But if you are, for instance, I'll pick random product, a washing machine.
Yeah.
You want to see what it looks like, but also you want to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like, so many retailers out there, and if I go to the extremes of this, IKEA allow you to put the product in your own room.
Yeah.
So like people are moving that buying experience forward so much that if we only have one or two static images of something, people aren't necessarily going to trust that behavior. And that can go for any product. People want to see the detail. They want to know that it's the right connection or it's the right pair of trainers or what it looks like from the front and back. And
well, I started messing around with this. I was trying to buy a pair of sunglasses before going on holiday, and it was amazing because I was able to literally take a picture, put them on, and I thought to myself, that is like incredibly good. Do you know what I mean? I was like, all right, okay, that makes a load of sense.
And if you put that in a place where if your competitor was doing that and then you just had one photo of that pair of sunglasses, you know where someone's going to go, even if the price was a little bit higher.
Yeah.
You've had it, you've tried it, you've seen it. That's where you're going to make the purchase.
Totally. So I think, like, again, we talk about UK consumers 3 times more likely to buy when video is present on product pages. Like, again, premium is on video, it's on high quality images. And again, there are good ways that you can do this now at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. There's good ways you can do it enough. But I think we're also in a space that these shots don't need to be the most professionally shot video in the world, because people are used to the likes of TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, where people are doing unboxing videos and everything's a little bit more casual. And I think if we can begin to even bring some aspects of that, because I know not everybody's budget is going to meet the most professional of levels. If we can start to even create some of those videos, it brings it to life. It brings the product as a real tangible thing. I can see it different angles. I can see somebody unboxing, seeing what's in the box. I now have a bit more trust that from that consumer, that's the product I'm getting.
And I think then social proofing and urgency cues, like again, in a social world where we're all connected, etc., online, this is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, star ratings and putting that against with booking.com as the example there. Left of this, only 25 left of this t-shirt. 6 people have this in their basket right now.
Yeah.
While we know not necessarily it's not always the most of transparent numbers,
Yep.
I think it works.
Yeah.
It absolutely works. And people will have that nervousness, especially if they're wanting to, whether it's book something, whether it's buy a t-shirt for their night out at the end of the week. If they can see there's only a certain number left, they're not leaving that for a few days. They're going to just make that purchase straight away to help carry them through. Booking.com do a lot of this, where they have star ratings, they have plus ratings, they have urgency queues, they allow reviews on pages, things like that. So there's a lot of social proof while also bringing in that level of urgency to make that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? You know, you're looking at what's on screen there, and it's like straight away you're drawn to the star ratings and the thumbs up, down, etc. You are drawn to those big red boxes. This is how I was teaching school. You know, it's like a red pen, urgency. So I think it's really important, and the psychology behind that's really interesting.
And then helpful product detail. I think where we are at is the space of, yes, people have a lack of trust around returns, trust around, is that product ready for me? So therefore they have a higher perceived level of doubt. If we have the ability to add and to those pages, let's help and support people. I've been having a little look at a site that sells air conditioning units recently, and there's terms on that site, for instance, who knows what that means? How do we make sure that we pull into that an example of what that content is? So it's almost add tool tips, give people sizing indicators that we can see there, just help somebody move through that, because not only are you helping them purchase that product, but you are making yourself appear as a much more trusted advisor in that space. Like, you know what you're talking about. You have this information that I need. So therefore, I've already built some trust with you, and therefore I'm more likely, whether the product's a little bit more expensive or not, I'm more likely to make that purchase.
Yeah, and in a world of things like ChatGPT and AI overviews and all the rest of it, this is increasing.
Oh yeah, from an SEO perspective, it's so important as well.
Yeah, so then I guess finally, in the last couple of minutes, we just wanted to touch on sort of how does checkout and payment experience can make or break the journey, Johnny?
Yeah, so there's 2 aspects to this. And if we look at this from a consumer side, before we look at it from a business side, there's a few different pieces that we see quite a lot of. They're almost at an instant barrier. One of them is forcing people to create an account before they've made a payment. There's so many times where we just have either tested or implemented allowing someone to make a guest purchase, and then we ask them to set up the account afterwards, because flipping it that way is almost, they made the purchase, but if you want to track your purchase and make sure where it's at, you need to create the account after.
Yeah.
People go, all right, yeah, I'll do it. But actually up front, if you're going to say, right, and now I need your email, I need all of the details, I need your address, I need it, and you're almost like, okay, I don't want to give passwords, I don't want to give too much detail, I just want to make a purchase. So flipping that around almost can offer a much easier route to conversion.
Yeah.
Because we're removing a barrier, albeit we're putting it one step later. Unnecessarily long checkouts. We seen a form for a clothing brand not too long ago that was asking for date of birth in one of their fields, was almost why.
Yeah.
So it was just removing some of those lines. We touched on it a little bit in the last session when we were looking at lead gen stuff, but the amount of times we see it in e-commerce where it's almost ask for every detail. And yeah, we can take some of that detail and support our marketing process and our campaigns, but we can ask for that after.
Yeah.
We don't need it straight up in front. And then hidden costs, poor transparency, as we touched on, we want to make sure that we just don't want to get somebody to that final stage of payment and then add an additional £5, £10 to that cost, even £2, where they'll go, I don't know what costs are.
Frustrating.
Yeah.
And a payment thing often. So
It just ticks up that cost as someone moves through. And then we can look at, from a business aspect, how often do companies actually look at their payment gateway and say, how long have we had this implemented? Are the payment terms right for me? And I think this is a huge win in a lot of cases. Like, it almost gets lost in a little bit of a black hole between, it doesn't always get managed by marketing. It doesn't always get managed by finance. It sort of falls between different teams in terms of actually who manages that payment gateway. But because you're not looking at it, you're not understanding the benefits that come with it. And that is increased security, reassurance that if transactions go through and if there is an issue, you know it's covered. Making sure those payments go through a lot easier is a lot obviously better. The speed and convenience that somebody can move through, reducing that fraud and making sure that, one, the user's getting a more seamless experience, but also internally, you know, those payments are stronger. There's no sort of fraud within that space. And then the better payment and sort of big savings comes from like the amount that you pay and almost a commission on that. And the amount of times we've spoken to companies who've gone with X for 10 years on the site, and it's their payment the payout that they would do would be so much less if they shifted that payment gateway, but it's just never something that a business looks at.
Yeah, and it's super competitive space as well, isn't it? So I think there is an element of being prepared to go out and negotiate as well with your payment gateways. But we'll touch on payment gateways, I think, in a future session. We've got
There's hopefully one that.
yeah, it's coming up. So I guess finally, we just wanted to finish, really conscious of time, but 3 practical tips. And again, we'll talk about the audit and people can get directly specific information about their specific site. So do sign up via the link that we've shared. But 3 practical tips you can do immediately to boost engagement and sales is what we wanted to finish on.
Clarity, transparency, just be clear on all costings, all information that people can have. I think we just need to make sure that we highlight that as a key point in someone's journey, not try and hide it away thinking that someone might not notice. Bring it to the forefront, be transparent. Enhance product visuals, make sure that even if we're doing the photos ourselves and making sure we're doing videos ourselves, be clear on that, but also clear on our call to actions, making sure that we're carrying somebody through that journey and almost hand holding them through those steps. And then the last one for me is we're entering that key peak time of year where we start coming into Black Fridays and Christmas and everything, that we want to get ahead of that curve. Like the stat there is 22% of companies aren't happy with their conversion rate. Now's the time to own that. If you're going to own it at any point, it's ahead of that peak season.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's like one of those, if you're not doing this in the next 4 weeks, it's almost like right off this year in terms of optimization work, in terms of that conversion piece, because you're not going to want to be testing this when you're throwing high volumes of traffic at it. And it's such a key period. You're changing too many variables at too risky a stage.
Great.
So again, I think that's probably a nice place to finish, to be honest, Johnny. And I think, like, hopefully you've seen that there's a lot of things that go on in this space. And by all means, do please, you know, I've said it before, do sign up for that free UX consultation to speak to Johnny and team about what you can do right now to immediately drive better conversions through your website. Thank you very much. Thanks for the input today, Johnny. And thanks for everybody who stayed with us and joined the session. Look forward to seeing you at the next Mediaworks Masterclass. And finally, have a great weekend and thank you again. Bye-bye.